Hi everyone, just continuing on with the Garden of Eden series, part 10. And I'm just continuing on Ezekiel, top of the page. And by the river, upon the bank thereof, on this side and on that side, will grow all the trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to his months, because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf thereof for medicine. So this to me speaks about the second Garden of Eden. And just looking at this diagram here, or this image here, the Garden of Eden was in this position. The great river ran out of Eden to the east, through the eastern gate, through the two walls, and then went out into the lowlands at the time and connected with the Euphrates out to the Persian Gulf. And there could have been another branch that went down to the Lake Neeson or the Dead Sea, So, there are a couple of possibilities, but I know that the waters that ran out into the Euphrates part of the water ran out from the Acropolis Hill, from below the altar or the temple where the tree of life resided. Revelation 22, in Eden restored. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. So that is, to me, that is a reflection of the waters flowing out from under the tree of life on the Acropolis Hill into flowing south and then east into the great river. Continuing down the middle of the great street of the city, on each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. So as you can see, the tree of life and its leaves are for the healing of the nations. It kind of reflects what we just read in Ezekiel. And I believe that the truth revealed from the hidden, that was guided by the book of the Lamb, is really the information that will heal the nations at the end of the day for the future. Another excerpt out of the Urantia book, The Tree of Life. In the center of the garden temple, Van planted the long-guarded tree of life, whose leaves were for the healing of the nations. So we've got this connection here of heaven and earth, and the truth of the tree of life not being a myth but an actual reality, and the information that is attached to it, i.e. the Urantia book, the book of the Lamb, the book about Jesus and his life and teachings, and the truth back to the beginning that we can verify, will be for the healing of the nations, more importantly for the people. Anyway, continuing, healing of the nations, whose fruit had long sustained him on earth. Van well knew that Adam and Eve would be dependent on this gift of Edentia for the life maintenance after they once appeared on Urantia in material form. Again, in this image, we have the three coplanar circles on top of the Acropolis, or the stone shrine of the Father, and in the center circle was planted the tree of life. And according to our last scans in the second expedition, it was determined that water came out from on top of the Acropolis, down through the canals, and eventually south into the great river. And this is also reflected in Enoch chapter 26. And I went from thence to the middle of the earth, and I saw a blessed place in which there were trees with branches abiding and blooming, of a dismembered tree, the core of the tree of life. And there I saw a holy mountain, i.e. the Father's stone shrine. And underneath the mountain, to the east, there was a stream, and it flowed toward the south, and then into the great river, flowing out of the Edenic Peninsula. Again, as we read in Ezekiel 47, afterward he brought me unto the door of the house, i.e. the stone temple, in the centre of the city, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward, for the forefront of the house stood toward the east, and the waters came down from under from the right side of the house at the south side of the altar. So we're all between three books. We have a similar description. The waters flowed down south into the great river unto the eastern gate and flowed to the east. And of course we can see this reflected in the first book of Adam and Eve. O Eve, remember that while we were in the garden we knew neither night or day. Think of the tree of life, from below which flowed the water. So again reflecting the springs from on top of the Acropolis in Eden that shed lustre over us. Remember, O Eve, the garden land, the submerged Edenic peninsula here, and the brightness thereof. Think, think how of that garden in which was no darkness while we lived in it. Absolutely. They lived in the garden before their fall and then expelled after the default. Here we see the Garden of Eden in this position, in the rectangular valley. The waters issued down the south of the altar and flowed into the great river, went out of the walls to the east country, and eventually hooked up with the Euphrates River. And here's another reflection of the water coming from the root of the tree of life. Then Adam and Eve came out of the cave of treasures and went near to the garden gate to the east, and there they stood to look at it and cried for having come away from it. So this is Adam and Eve in the cave of treasures in the second Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve went from before the gate of the garden to the southern side of it, and found there was there the water that watered the garden from the root of the tree of life, and that split itself from there into 4 rivers over the earth. Then they came and went near to that water and looked at it, and saw it was the water that came forth from under the root of the tree of life in the garden. And Adam cried and wailed and beat his chest for being severed from the garden, and said to Eve. So again, we'll just look at the Uranti book to corroborate, to perhaps correct some notions. It was fed by, this is about the great river, it was fed by 4 tributaries which took origin in the coastal hills of the Edenic Peninsula, and these are the 4 heads of the river which went out of Eden. As you can see here, went out of Eden, which later became confused with the branches of the rivers surrounding the second garden, i.e. the Tigris, Euphrates and other branches. And again, reflecting same water coming out from the great river, where part of it emanated from the on top of the Acropolis. O Eve, remember that while we were in the garden we knew neither night or day. Think of the tree of life, from below which flowed the water that shed lustre over us. Oh, remember, O Eve, the garden land and the brightness thereof. Think, O think of that garden in which was no no darkness while we lived in it. So in this next section, a description of the same first Garden of Eden and the general area. But when God made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northward, because there was water. This was so that he and Eve would not be able to go near the sea of water, where they could wash themselves in it and be cleansed from their sins, erase the transgressions they had committed, and be no longer reminded of it in the thought of their punishment. As to the southern side of the garden, God did not want Adam to live there either, because when the wind blew from the north, it would bring him on the southern side the delicious smell of the trees of the garden. Wherefore God did not put Adam there. This was so that he would not be able to smell the sweet smell of those trees, forget his transgression, and find consolation for what he had done by taking delight in the smell of the trees, and yet not be cleansed from his transgression. So it's a fairly vague kind of description of the Garden of Eden, pointing to the waters that surround the peninsula, almost an island. Here's another extract. But when our father Adam and Eve went out of the garden, they walked the ground on their feet, not knowing they were walking. And when they came to the opening of the gate of the garden and saw the broad earth spread before them, covered with stones large and small, and with sand, they feared and trembled and fell on their faces from fear that came over them. And they were as dead. So as you can see, they're coming through the east gate, through the inner gate, and then the outer gate, and the earth spread before them, which infers the gates were on an isthmus, or a narrow tract of land, which the great river ran right in between. And we can see that in this image here. Now, this is a very interesting part of a Sumerian tablet, which describes Enki and his friend slaughtering Hambaba, the caretaker of the Cedar Mountain, and I believe this has a direct connection to the demise of Adam and Eve. But I'm going to save this for the next video, being free software, because it'll take quite a bit of time to get through.